And the truth is, I lived a very immoral and drunken and profane and narcissistic and self-absorbed and really self-destructive kind of a life.
I came to at a different club much later in the AM hours, and I remember I came to my real senses with a pill in my hand. I remember that while I'm holding on to this pill, I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? I look up and security is running over while I'm in a circle of people, all with pills in their hands. Security is running up and I had a choice to make. I could drop the pill and they could find it and blame me for it, or I could take the pill and make it disappear.
I discovered that I could do more drugs than anybody.
I wanted to put life together, and it wasn't coming together for me. So I was going to my classes in college and went into the science lab out there, saw some chemicals, took these plastic bags. I didn't even know what all they said, except I took the ones that was marked poison, brought it back to my home, put it in a glass of water early one morning. Everybody was out of the house. Went into the restroom and just, it started to froth immediately, effervesce. So I just stirred it with a teaspoon and gulped the thing down.
Hey, I cannot take this anymore. I can't take this. I've got to end this thing. And I thought, I'm going to do like they do in the movies. A car is going to come by. I'm going to jump in front of the next car that comes by. And I'm going to end all this.
That was my life. What people saw was me winning awards for investigative reporting. What they didn't see was me literally drunk in the snow in an alley on Saturday night.
I abandoned my wife at one point to go to Las Vegas for a couple days, and I remember that from the moment I got to Vegas at nighttime, I was high on ecstasy. I was rolling on ecstasy for days. Ecstasy. I tried cocaine. I was drinking. It was marijuana. It was everything I could to stuff into this weekend of just pure, unbridled idolatry.
And my system began to reject it. And there I was holding on to the sink as the moisture was coming out of my body. I collapsed on my knees.
I was always after the perfect high. I was always after the ultimate experience of pleasure.
I had a reputation for wickedness in my high school. I was full of pride and anger. And I remember sitting there high on diesel gas.
I remember this one night that I took 6 tabs of ecstasy. I was at the point where it wasn't working anymore. I had to take so much to feel even anything. And I remember that all at once, my whole body felt like it was on fire.
I had just purchased a large amount of cocaine. I was starting to deal that. It was the new drug that had come in.
But he saw me in that pitiful state, put me into a taxi and rushed me to a hospital. And when I was fully composed of my senses again, all I knew was needles were in my arm because of the dehydration.
My parents took me to the hospital that night. I was so incoherent.
So a lot of anger, a lot of rage. I remember once my wife and I got in an argument and our little daughter was there and I had so much rage, I blew up. And I remember I reared back and boom, I kicked a hole right through our living room wall.
And they started to go to this little Italian Pentecostal church. I'm getting heavier and heavier into drugs now, more and more heroin, and they're starting to pull away just a little bit.
Getting worse and worse, and I remember that at a certain point I realized this isn't going to help, I'm going to die. And so I remember that I immediately started to pray, and I was high, and I was hot, and I was dying.
And the ultimate desolation of knowing you didn't even know how to live, now you didn't know how to die.
They were going with these 2 girls whose uncle was a Pentecostal pastor, whose dad had been praying for them for years. Now they're going to this little church and they're hearing about angels, demons, miracle stories.
And our daughter's crying and my wife's crying. It's like, hey, when my little daughter, Allison, was just a toddler, if she was alone in the living room, playing with some blocks or toys or whatever, and she would hear me come home from work through the front door, her natural reaction was just to gather her toys and go in her room and shut the door. Is he going to be drunk again? Is he going to be yelling and screaming and kicking holes in things? You know what? At least it's nice and quiet in here.
I know, God, that you have every right to kill me. And I said, please just don't kill me yet. Please just crush my life, destroy my life, and help.
That was the crossing road moment for me in asking questions more seriously than I had been asking.
Because they're going with these girls, and these girls are going to this church, and they really liked the church because it was different.
And the woman downstairs was a Christian. And this woman, Linda, became best friends with my wife, Leslie.
My phone was shut off. My electric was shut off. My water was shut off. I had an eviction notice on my door. They were repossessed my car, and the person I was working for at the time told me, "I'm not going to pay you, sue me." And that's where God really started to speak to me.
And he brought a little red New Testament and wanted to read it to me, and my mother said he couldn't. I was in critical condition.
So she asked questions. She went to church with her. She checked it out. Finally, after many months of checking things out, Leslie came up to me one day and said, "Lee, I made a big decision." I said, "What?" She said, "I've decided to become a follower of Jesus Christ."
The girlfriends are getting serious. My friends are getting serious. It's pulling the band apart.
"I'm turning to you now. Please forgive me. Please save me." I said, "Take over my life." And here's what I said. I said, "You're the boss." I said, "You're the boss. You tell me what to do. You run my life. You save me and take over my life."
I grasped onto that verse and said, "Jesus, if you are offering me life like I have never had it, I want that life from you."
And I couldn't take it anymore. I thought I'm losing my mind.
Honestly, the first word that went through my mind, divorce.
Aged 17, and the Bible handed over to my mother. I couldn't hold it because as I said, the dehydration had set in. So my mother, in her heavy accent, reading this to me, I prayed the prayer.
And what shocked me is in the following months, I began to see positive changes in her character and her values and the way she related to me and the children. And it was winsome and it was attractive. And so finally, one Sunday morning, I'm sleeping off a hangover and she's getting ready to go to church. And she looks at me and she says, "Lee, why don't you come to church with me today?"
As unconditionally as I gave myself to drugs, and I took the plunge in, I began to read the Word and pray. By the time I was saved a year, I was memorizing 20 verses from the Bible a day.
That was my life.
And there is no other explanation as to how it happened.